Okay, hello, welcome everyone. This is the start of the SDS webinar on helping you to steer clear of development blunders. We have a really great panel today, organized by my colleague Ricky Prota. So thank you very much, Ricky, for organizing this particular webinar. I'm just, as people sort of start to roll in, I'm just going to sort of go over a few things here. First of all, in the past, we've had some really excellent webinars with the Welsh CHC and Jonathan Walters from the Regulator of Social Housing. Now, I'd really love to do the same thing with Homes England, and we've been asking ever since I first started webinars in 2020, March, when this first all began. And they have actually started a webinar, and I have once again reached out. So what I'm asking is if you'd like us to do a webinar in partnership with Homes England on viability to address your concerns for the future, then please do email myself and Victoria Keane with some ideas of things that you'd like us to cover. So I'm just going to put in that email. In the chat, you've got Victoria Keane's email and my email, and you know, hopefully we can make that happen. Okay, so a few other things. The purpose of the webinar today is to have a very conversational tone. In the questions and answers, you'll see that you're actually allowed to upvote. You can answer each other's questions. So ideally what we're trying to do is have some sort of a live interactive conversation. So please do not hesitate to type in the chat, and I will go ahead and take care of that. Right, so quickly we'll go to Andrew Markham. Andrew, how is everything looking at the moment viability wise?
There's an opening statement.
What's the big issues of the day you'd like to discuss?
Wow, it's looking great. It's fantastic, isn't it? Wow. The wind has blown everything away. Well, the only thing, should we do a kind of round introduction to everyone? We're all sitting on here.
Yeah, we absolutely can.
My name's Andrew Markham. Happy to be here, Chris. Thank you for setting this up, and Ricky. And I head up the kind of new business team at SDS. My background is development, so kind of used to be a kind of land buyer, and I'm still involved in development on the private side. And viability is probably my expertise, really. I kind of shamefully enjoy it, which is interesting, and help kind of clients get the best out of pro-val, land val, understand viability and the trends and what's happening in the sector. So I'll come back to your question once we've said hello to everyone. How's that?
Great stuff. Vanessa?
Hi. Again, thanks for organising this today, Chris and Ricky. I'm Vanessa Dockrell. I'm Assistant Development Director at wrong company, at Thrive Housing. I'm going to get berated for that one in the team meeting later, aren't I? So I've been in the sector now for about 8 years, but like Andrew, I come from the dark side, worked for developers for far too many years, and now quite happily settled at Thrive Homes. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. And on to you, Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna James. I'm Group Head of Development at Taurus. We're a RP working in the northwest of England. I've always been in the RP side for the last 15 years, so that's where my expertise lie.
Thank you very much, Anna. And lastly, but certainly not least, John Stevens.
Hello there, everyone. Yeah, I originally trained as an architect and then got involved with housing policy and regeneration with local authorities, and then worked with housing associations, and I've delivered affordable housing for the last 30 years, believe it or not. And what have I learned? Keep your nerve and keep going in development. That's basically what I've learned. Yeah,
absolutely. Hard hat. Yeah, make sure you have your hard hat. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the presentations. I mean, obviously we can kind of unpick the presentations and ask a few questions from that. So, but I think for me the key challenge at the moment is this seal payment. You know, and I've been looking at kind of sites and doing some viability and everything, and I don't know yet that the landowners understand the seal payment that is required, and that's not filtering through to the kind of offers that you're putting in. I literally had a conversation yesterday with an estate agent, and they were saying that the seal payment on this particular scheme, this site, is so massive that it's impacting, you're not going to get what you think, 30%, 32% of the GDV or whatever it is in your locality. So that's a big challenge. That's a challenge actually happening on the ground now, is those seal payments and the infrastructure you've got to put in, and all the other kind of stealth taxes that we call it, that you need. Is it filtering through to the kind of bottom line as such? So that was.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I'm going to have to. We're going to have to go to Vanessa now. So Vanessa, if you'd like to share your screen and start, we are very much looking forward to that. And anyone who's just joined, as I said, please use the question and answer section, upvote, comment, and I will bring you in as appropriate.
Do you want us to turn our mics off?
No, you can
videos, or
stay, as long as there's no feedback, we can stay and keep it conversational.
Can you see that now, Chris?
Yes, that is perfect.
Fantastic, great. Okay, just one thing I want to start with, and this is a bit of a discussion we had before this event, and that's, I've come from a developer background, and what you need to think about is, from a development team, from an RP, you're jack of all trades and master of nothing. And you think about a development company like Taylor Wimpey or Barrett's or whoever, they've got whole teams, they've got technical teams, they've got commercial teams, build teams, they've got that whole expertise in-house. And kind of most of us, I think, online are doing this on a bit of a shoestring. So I think sort of, making these mistakes, they happen, but it's kind of about learning from it, picking yourself up and moving on, but not kind of kicking yourself for some of these mistakes that do happen and inevitably happen. So the first on my sort of slides is the kind of finding the right approach for your organisation. And again, this is about balancing risk and finding that mix that's right for you. So first off, I've got Section 106 deals. Now, you'll all have experienced the delights of the Persimmons and the Taylor Wimpeys. And I think, yes, it's a lower risk model. You're taking advantage of their buying capacity. But I have to say, at the moment, it's a massively, massively competitive market. We're seeing some very, very severe offers out there, for want of a better word, from some of the for-profit RPs. Don't think they're particularly sustainable long term, but they are out there. It's making it very, very difficult to get your foot in the door. That aside, I think there are the goods, the bads, and the uglies. I won't say which are which, but I'm pretty sure you've all got a hit list of who to go to and who not to go to. I suppose the downside really is you get what you're given. From having been in the developer's shoes, you are kind of a necessary evil for their developments, and you kind of the hospital bit in the corner. So, it's a very different relationship and very difficult to control. Obviously, in terms of delivery, again, if their sales are good, you're last on the list. So it's a very, very difficult to control solution, but part of the mix and ticks the box for the lower risk solution. Development additionality, this is kind of something that I've been working on the last few years, and this is where you can start to build a positive relationship with these house builders. At the moment, it's not really much of an option because the market's quite hot. The sales are going really well, but moving towards stickier times, we've looked at solutions where we've taken market units and converted them. The plus side again to this is it's lower risk. You're benefiting from their buying power as a developer as well. But what you need to remember, what they need to remember, this is an investor model, and that's a bit of a step change in the relationship. And again, can be challenging at first. They're used to dealing with you on a Section 106, but it's kind of really asserting you're the investor. This is what you want. This is the spec you want. This is the timing you want. And I think there's an opportunity here really to have a lot more control with low risk. Next, we have the package deal. Probably one of my favourite methods, because you're dealing with generally local SMEs, which you tend to get that good relationship. They know they know what your expectations are, and it's about using them to do the legwork. As I said earlier, as RPs, we're expected to do everything and know a little bit about everything. So use their expertise in-house, their technical teams, their land guys, to go out there and do that legwork for you. And I think that relationship is really, really important. I say lower risk depending on contract structure. I think that's a really important point. Again, setting out your stall at the start with these package deals. Some of these development agreements can be a bit fluffy and woolly, but it's making sure that you've got the right legal advice and you're setting out everything from the start, your expectations. And again, as I say, building relationships with SMEs, I think, is really important in this environment. I say control on the end project. Obviously, some of these package deals tend to come with a planning ticket, and it's how much of that you can influence. And I think that's an important consideration when you're looking at these deals. Land and build. So again, back down to, you know, not necessarily having the expertise within house, but thinking about this as an option. You've got the three sort of main types of land purchase: buying it with consent, subject to planning, and unconditional. You know, and each one brings its own risks. But it's having the right advice and the right support. Don't be frightened to go out to consultants to give you that support, because you're not going to know it all. Build contract wise, for those of you that sort of on the early stages of procurement, it's making sure that you're clear on what you want, having the right professional support, having the right employers agents on board, and taking advantage of good frameworks. Again, there are good and there are bad out there. Generally, those conversations with the contractors, you'll find out quite quickly which are the better ones to deal with, and you'll tend to get that better support on the tender returns if you're using a framework that's easier to use for the contractors. Partnerships and JVs. I'm going to sort of say this one with caution. A good one for me, I think, is partnering with other RPs. You know, we've got the same drivers at the end of the day. We've got the same ambition. Go out there, make those networks with your local RPs. If they've got their own development teams and you haven't got that expertise in-house, make use of that and look at development management opportunities. Now, partnering and JVs with developers, yeah, proceed with caution. I think one thing I'd say about that, it's a good option, but you don't necessarily have the same drivers. You know, for a lot of the small developers, you're effectively a nice bank for them with low charges. Shared risk and reward is one part of it. And I think, again, just proceeding on that with caution, making sure they actually have got what they say they've got, and have got the sort of technical expertise that they're selling to you. I know there's some of my ex-colleagues online that have probably experienced the same as I have, where that's gone a bit sour, but it can be an advantage. But again, I think that's more about building that relationship with the contractor first before venturing into any JVs. My favourite piece, due diligence, doing your homework. Technical due diligence, I think, is the most important thing. And again, you know, we're not completely experienced at all of this. The house builders have got these teams that are all over these things, but they still make the mistakes. Yeah, they still make the same mistakes over and over again. There's a nice pretty picture on the bottom left, and hopefully most of you recognise them, and hopefully none of you have experienced that, because that can be quite a costly mistake to make. The old friend Japanese knotweed. So one thing I'd say is create yourself a checklist, look at the constraints of the site, you know, walk the site. Don't rely on Google Maps. That's the biggest no-no. Look at the availability of services, ground conditions. There might be existing services running across the site that can completely blight the whole thing. Look at your access, ecology, rights of way, site constraints, stuff that comes in legal due diligence. But I think from a perspective, you know, it's common sense. Go out there, walk the site and get the feel for it. That's really, really important. If you're taking forward a scheme that's already consented, look at the buildability and deliverability. There's no good, you know, having a block of flats of, I don't know, 200 flats that are all handed over in one go. Think about how you can phase that cash flow, phase that build. And as I said earlier, if you don't have the expertise in-house, use a consultant. You know, don't be frightened to ask for people's help. And there are plenty of good consultants out there that will give you that support and advice. You'll be glad to know my final slide. Legal due diligence, find the right legal firm. There are some really good organisations out there that are experienced in our sector. You know, make sure you go through that process and find the right people, have that experience, that track record in affordable housing. One thing that I will always say, be clear on the heads of terms. If in doubt, caveat it. If there's any question that you've got about the land, just caveat it. And that will come out through the due diligence process anyway. Looking at restrictive covenants, easements, again, having that walkover, you'll get a good feel for some of those, particularly stuff like prescribed rights of way. Quite often we have this big glut of unregistered land with prescribed rights across the UK, and it's massive. But making sure that you're aware of it, knowing about it early, insuring for it, anything like that, ensure right from day one. Don't dawdle about it. Don't wait till later on in the day, because the more you know about it, the less insurable it becomes. And I'm sure we've all had those headaches at some point. And again, boundary issues, party wall issues can be headaches. As I said before, insuring against anything you can. I'd always say do that from day one. And that's my final slide.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Would anyone like to expand on any of those topics or come in on that?
A couple of questions. Do you Section 106, do you think the local authorities in your area are pushing the price up of the Section 106 because their viability assumptions can be a lot more kind of attractive for over the longer period? Is that having an impact in your? Not
something we've particularly experienced, Andrew, but then at the moment our program's quite low on Section 106.
Okay. Yeah.
It feels to me more like the for-profits coming in. I mean, right. some of the assumptions that we're hearing on payback periods are just absolutely nuts at the moment, and I think that's one of the biggest impacts.
Okay. Anna, is that your experience as well? Or
I think for us, the issue we have with 106s is the number of units that come through and the number of sites, because for us it's labour intensive from both a perspective of sale agreements, but also on the other side of housing management and having to manage that stock that quite often is quite far away. So in terms of a management and maintenance, and also the number of units that come through, maybe for social rent, maybe for shared ownership, and that mix. So we're having quite a lot of discussions internally about trying to be a bit more selective about what we go for and in what areas, because it can become a nightmare, not for us at the start, but once it's handed over.
And can I just ask about management companies on 106s as well? Because from my experience, as housing associations, you very often get left holding the baby, being the majority owner on a potential site, or as the management company actually dissolves over time or actually becomes insolvent, do you end up holding the baby in terms of a management company in unadopted areas as housing associations?
I think they're conversations we're definitely having with our leasehold team at the moment, and we've got quite a small Section 106 programme, but it's growing rapidly. There are a lot of opportunities coming to market at the moment, so it's definitely something that we'll need to discuss more internally.
I think as well it comes back to having that relationship with the developers, making sure you're picking the right relationships, and again setting out their expectations and your expectations. But there are some that are prepared to listen to that, and quite a few of them that aren't.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of it comes down to your common sense. I mean, you said, common sense about walking the site. That is so. I know it sounds so simple, but it is so true. I mean, nowadays you can do pretty much a feasibility study from my desk. But that doesn't take away of walking the site and having a real good look at it and getting a feel for it. And I think I don't think people do that anymore.
And I think probably walking the site with your legal team. I've done that a few times, and they'll look at it with different eyes.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
You've taken my slides, Vanessa.
That's what she's saying to Anna. So, Anna, if you would like to share your screen and begin.
Yeah, sure, will do. Okay, can you see that?
Yes, perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks. Okay, so hopefully I won't pick up on everything that Vanessa has already. No, I'm pretty sure I won't. Just to start off, let me see, how do I click forward? There we go. So just as a starter, really, in terms of kind of before you're going into your package deals, your land-led, your section 106 is getting your development assumptions right, and it's kind of pertinent for us at the moment at Taurus because we've been reviewing those, and I would kind of recommend, given how fast-paced everything seems to be at the moment, of reviewing those at least every 6 months to a year, and collaborating with your internal teams on those, obviously your asset, your finance team, but also your assets and your facilities team, and what they're experiencing and what the strategies are for them going forward, so that you are able to assess the implications of those and your on the schemes that you're appraising at any one time. I think for us, service charges is a huge issue. We kind of look to design out service charges where we can, but having an assumption without actual costs can really make or break a scheme we're finding at the moment, especially obviously with apartment schemes. So it's just ensuring that you are getting evidence from lived in buildings, and your team are collating that evidence for you then to be able to put something more robust in your appraisal. So that, you know, you can, as we do when we are appraising, mess around with those figures to ensure that you've got something that's prudent, but also not something that's killing your scheme, really. I think stress testing in your assumptions is really important, and we have about 4 or 5 stress tests that we have to do through a financial appraisal when we are going for approval, and it's kind of giving you know, giving board some comfort of what could happen. No one has a crystal ball, but we know that things are changing rapidly at the moment, and it's giving them some comfort that that's being assessed at the point of appraisal. Having one version of the truth, you know, it depends how big your development team is. We've got a really big development team at Taurus, and just ensuring that when you are reviewing those assumptions, that they are disseminated to the whole team, and kind of the previous ones are filed away, not to be used again, because it's really important. You know, different members of the team have different experience when it comes to using profiles, so ensuring that that appraisal model and template has been updated, and everyone's working from the same hymn sheet will mean that you do not have any issues once the scheme's been approved. And I think this is a really pertinent one at the moment, given how many funding streams and grant rates are around at the moment with the launch of the new SP. People have got wave 2 that they're still delivering. The 16 to 21 programme is still being delivered. So it's ensuring that you clarify what funding stream the scheme you're appraising is and what grant rate you should be using depending on the tenure. And I think kind of those elements, it just supports a really robust programme management team that can support you in that, and obviously, you know, relying on Homes England for assistance if required. But if you've got a few funding streams, it can be confusing at times, so it's just ensuring that everyone knows what they're working to. So this is a bit on the same as Vanessa's slide, but just, do you know what you're buying? And as Andrew said, Google Maps is great, but yeah, a site visit is essential. Walking the site, obtaining the red line boundary, cross-referencing that against the title, getting your solicitors out on site. I think they want to do that. Obviously, it can highlight additional issues, but it's only issues that would come further down the line. So feeling confident that you have, you know, you've gone out, you've looked at what could happen. And any evidence of public use, and I put this slide up. This is actually a picture of a site that we've purchased, and it's, you know, it's been bought already, but we've got advertising hoardings that have been put on since we've bought it, so there are issues that we need to deal with, and a garage adjacent that is using it for cars. Now, we knew, not with the advertising hoarding, but with the garage next door, that would be an issue that we would need to tackle. It's a land-led scheme that's you know, kind of in the pipeline. But it just helps to know what the risks are and trying to mitigate those as you're working through the development feasibility. I think a big one for us is bringing our board on the journey, what the development strategy is within your organisation, and that everyone's clear on that and has clear direction, knows what they're looking for, what the drivers are from the corporate team. Obviously, I've mentioned already the pace of change is massive at the moment, so things are changing all the time, and it's helping your board understand that and understand that a lot of the, Vanessa mentioned package deals are, a particular favourite of hers. Taurus have gone through, we do a bit of land-led and regeneration schemes, as well as the package and the Section 106s. And I think it's setting the story that those land-led and regen schemes are long-term, and you need board to understand the market that you're working in, but also what, paint the picture of what that area could be like in the next 5 to 10 years. And really showing them the stress testing that I was talking about when you're doing your appraisal assumptions. Obviously, no one can foresee what's going to happen. We all know that after the past 2 years, but being prudent in what you're presenting gives them the confidence, I think. Also getting them out to site, I think we're all really used to, as we are now, being on a webinar, going through a presentation, which gives you a flavour, but it's not the same. So we do a lot of board walkabouts in our areas, showing sites that we've purchased, sites that we're looking at, and kind of bringing things to life. I think really gives them the confidence and, the excitement of what you're trying to deliver. And I think external influence, which I'll go on to on a later slide, but just about getting external consultants in to discuss what's going on in the market at the moment, what they're seeing with other RPs, what they're seeing with costs, being able to deliver that from an external perspective, I think really helps boards see what's happening in that strategic land, really. Vanessa touched on this slightly, but I totally agree. And using your consultants' expertise, we do a lot of kind of legal sessions at lunchtime. We get all the team in on Teams to go through kind of issues that people are experiencing, issues that your legal teams are experiencing, planning consultants, a lot of REAs come in. I think what Vanessa said at the start in terms of, this was quite a daunting topic, I felt, for me, because I am in no way an expert and have made many development blunders. But I think you will never be an expert in this field, because every site and scheme that you come across has got something different that you have not seen before. And it's being able to call on those expertise to assist you and navigate your way through, a fairly complex profession. So I would just say, don't be too daunted by that. Ricky asked me to come at this from a perspective of how we have steered clear of development blunders by using our in-house contractor. So at Taurus, we have an in-house contractor called HMS, and the aim there is that they operate commercially to invest socially. So any profits that they make are then reinvested into social initiatives run by our charity, Taurus Foundations. So we've been able to bring them on board from the very inception of a scheme, even when it comes to looking at land, they're able to engage surveys really early. We mitigate the risk in D&B. Obviously, the risk is with the contractor there, but the likelihood of provisional sums, I don't know what anyone else is finding at the moment, but they are littered with them at the moment because of the risk out there. So the fact that our in-house contractor has been on board from the start and can continually talk to us about what's happening in the market, it means that we get a much better fixed price. And I also think from the nature of the full development process and post handover, it's a really improved customer service. Obviously we have, we're delivering over 1,000 units a year at the moment. So that's over a number of contractors that are delivering schemes for us and then going into the defects period. They all have different levels of customer service. And it is, a massive bone of contention within the organisation that then there is not a consistent customer service to the customer at the end of it. And being able to deliver with our in-house contractor kind of mitigates that and allows us to deliver the customer service we want to, really. And that's all.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Are there any questions on that one before we move on?
So just one point on that, Chris, actually, I think on one of your earlier slides, Anna, it's a really, really important point, and that's about engaging with the wider business. At the end of the day, these guys have got to manage them once we've finished them, and it's making sure that they're comfortable with what we're delivering. And I think I've seen in a few RPs there's quite a disjoint between development and the wider business, and I think you've got to bring them on the journey from the start. I think that's a really key point.
Are you talking about the board, or are you talking
No,
about
just talking about the wider team, the actual ops team. You know, I think it's fundamental. There's no point us handing them a complex block of apartments that has got, you know, very onerous kind of servicing requirements and maintenance requirements. It's about getting them to buy in from the start of that process.
Yeah,
Because
getting our
that transition-
facilities, getting our facilities teams on site very early doors is massive for us in being able to not come up against massive issues, you know, at 28-day notice when it's way too late. So they are involved kind of design stage. And I think there is an assumption, you're right, Vanessa, that development just go off and do their own thing, and then here you go, here's your scheme, crack on the rest of the business, and it doesn't help, does it? It doesn't help the business. So yeah, a lot of engagement goes on internally.
The other side of that coin would be there's too many cooks, you know, involved. So you'll never get anything done if you keep asking everyone permission for everything.
Well, you ask them once and get their views, and then put it all into a document and lead on that.
And move on. Are you finding significant savings on your in-house construction team? Has that come through yet? Is it?
I think it's probably savings in terms of the legwork that we do. And I think, you know, what Vanessa said about RPs, you know, we have lots of skills in different areas, but we're not experts in any one. And so being able to get them to do that upfront work has really assisted us with concentrating on other schemes and kind of that trust with us. I think finding savings at the moment is very difficult. But it's just the security that we have when we are going with, I think we're finding a lot at the moment that contractors are really, you know, they're pricing in the risk, aren't they? The inflation is massive.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
and flexible contracts, I think that's the kind of key word, isn't it?
That's the way we're going. Yeah,
flexible contracts, and it will change every month. And then obviously, you know, landlord schemes, you know, have you got a team dedicated to doing that? How does the dynamics work within the development department?
So we have a growth and partnerships team that primarily look at the land-led kind of strategic regen schemes, the longer term elements. And then I head up the delivery side, which looks at the 106s and the package deals. It's quite fluid at the moment. And, you know, both coming from two organisations coming together that had, you know, the picture I showed you there with the burnt out car and the McDonald's sign is a land-led scheme that we started back in 2017, and you know, we're only just getting to site, and that's what we were talking about, local authority planners, you know, that's been 2 years in the planning process. So there's huge lessons to be learned, I think, in that land-led side, but we've got a specific team now dealing with those that area, because we do want it to be part of our business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. John.
I'd just like to ask a question, actually, in terms of engaging with your asset teams. What's the current dynamic in terms of lower carbon technologies? Are they saying keep it simple? Or are they coming up with recommendations, or is it an area that we all feel a bit nervous about?
Having just reviewed our spec documents, I can say we don't know. And we are doing, you know, we've got our director is sitting on a working group of looking at doing, we need pilots for these sorts of things, because no one's prepared to put their money where their mouth is and go full scale on it, because who knows where we'll be in 5 years' time. We are looking at, with our land-led scheme in Liverpool, that's got Mersey Heat energy, low carbon district connection that Peel are putting in. So we're going forward with that. It's more costly, definitely, but obviously thinking of the longer term, you know, it's something that we do want to engage with. So I don't think we're clear at all yet on what way we're going.
But
I
Yeah,
think we're
stop.
in the same boat as well, John. I mean,
Right.
yeah, you know, what I'm trying to sort of get across to the teams on sort of sustainability and thinking about future proofing. At the moment, we're still in a very competitive market. We're competing against house builders that it's not quite on their radar yet. So
Mm.
they're not factoring it into their build costs,
Mm.
which makes it takes that kind of competitive edge, you know, when we're looking at new sites.
Yeah, it's being compliant with the regs, because the regs are obviously changing as well, aren't they? To
Yeah.
you know, electrical supply and things like that. For so that again, that's the impact. If you've got a site that's 2 or 3 years in the making, that the regs are going to change the time you can have actually come to actually develop it and build it.
Wow.
Cool.
Apart from Insulate Britain, no one is actually legislating the private developers, and that puts you at a huge disadvantage. Is that what you're trying to say, Vanessa?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
It's a balance, isn't it? It's a balance between, you know, the RP hat on and doing the right thing and actually being competitive in a, you know, in that kind of market.
yeah, it's a different view, isn't it? Obviously, the developer is only going to be forced to build at building regs. So, you know, that's their position, really, isn't it? And then you guys obviously looking at the longer term, because it's the cost savings of that position. So it's that balance, and it's the balance on the product that you're getting from the private developer as well. And
it's whether we, you know, that's a good point actually, Andrew. So whether we need to start thinking about the life cycle costings as part of our appraisal assumptions, you know, and thinking about, you know, the longer term running costs.
Absolutely, and I think that's the bit that is difficult. You know, the difficult part is what is going to change and how it's going to change, and what's the long-term position for you guys, rather than private guys are going to be building to a set of standards that is forced on them, and that's it. You know, really, because there's not. Is there a demand out there for? I think it's changing. I think there never used to be a massive demand for kind of air source heat pumps, cheaper fuel, but I think that's, you know, with the pricing going up, I think that has changed it. But has it come through to the private developers of their product? I'm not sure. John, are they, you know, do you think that some of the high-end private developers will probably bring air source heat pumps into their products because there's a marketing avenue for that?
I think there's a danger of going down the eco bling route. We had it before with windmills and panels, when the real solution is actually get the fabric right first, and that's being driven by the building regulations in terms of getting the envelope right, and then it's basically managing a heat demand and ventilation after that. So we are being encouraged to go away from gas, aren't we? So it's how we're going to heat these well insulated homes in the future and minimize the energy costs and the CO2 production. But that's all part of being a asset owning housing association, isn't it? And it's about managing your stock and looking at your business plan into the future, and maybe looking at some of the poor performing stock and saying maybe it's time to divest ourselves of that, or regenerate it or refurbish it. But it's actually coming up with viable solutions that don't give you issues down the line. You want to come up with something sensible, and fabric first, and then look at something that can be repaired by a local contractor or consultant that doesn't need a fancy part from halfway around the world to make it work.
John, would you like to go into your presentation now, please? We're a little bit late.
Are we? Okay, all right. Let me have a go. Right.
It's all good discussion.
Let me see if I can share a screen.
Do we have any questions from the audience?
Well, there's one question from Nuala, and Nuala, we will come straight back to you as soon as John's finished.
Oh, this looks familiar.
This looks familiar. I just can't.
This is our stuff, isn't it? This is John and me do workshops about viability, and this is some of the slides that we've. Yeah, this is some of the slides that we've used.
Right, I actually want to move my toolbar at the moment so I can actually get to the controls.
You want to do view all?
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. So, what can we see?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Okay. Hopefully, here we go.
Development is risky. Yes.
Development is risky. Okay.
Good.
But what are the risks? Yeah. Andrew will have seen this before. This is something that we deliver to boards. And I thought on the topic of steering clear of development blunders, we'd actually look quite strongly at what the risks can be, and could we map these risks. So the main risk categories that we see, and we present these to boards on a regular basis just to alert their interest. Yes, of course, there's cost around poor estimating and budgeting. Sales, if you're involved with sales, whether it's shared ownership or outright sale, or even the rent to buy transition, getting that price right on what you've developed. Technical risks in terms of legals, planning, what's going on in the grounds, carrying out your due diligence, which has been a topic of both Vanessa and Anna. Reputational risk, so the effect on people around you in terms of your development activities. That's a risk that has to be managed. And obviously your relationship with the regulator is a risk that has to be managed, and that's about your governance and your access to grant. We obviously have a financial risk, which can impact on your business plan and your overall organizational viability. So I'm going to actually look at those risk categories and try to map them. It's rather dry, this presentation. It's not about sites, but hopefully we'll start a debate about it. But most people are used to, in the dry science of risk management, looking at a risk matrix, which is basically the likelihood of something to happen times the impact should it occur. So the more likely something is to happen and the higher impact it has, the more critical the risk is. It's rather dry, but here we go. Mapping the risks. Cost. What do we think about cost? Is that a high risk? Is it going to have a critical impact? Well, actually, we believe you should be able to manage the cost aspect. It was in original slides seen as low. I would say because of current circumstances, we probably need to raise the risk level on cost to a medium with all those provisional sums that are out there. The traditional view is a design build contract puts the risk onto the developer, but we're starting to see more increased provisional sums rising into these design and build contracts. There's obviously a cost premium for trying to put the price risk onto the contractor, and that's reflected in the value for money. And we also have the extraordinary that occurs, which has occurred to us with, first of all, Brexit, then COVID, and who knows whatever in world events. So the supply of timber from Ukraine may be restricted, perhaps in the next few months. In terms of looking at sales, if you are engaged with sales, this is seen as a very high risk. I think Andrew would reflect this coming from the commercial sector, that actually getting the sales price right to achieve a timely sale is very difficult. To actually make sure that you are the ones benefiting from any surplus or profit, and it's not the first purchaser, because you've undervalued it, takes it away and gains that benefit. You've gone to all the hard work of developing homes for sale, and you need to maximize the benefit from that effort. It's considered the biggest single development risk, probably by the private sector. Yeah, by the public sector, we might have some other risks. It's often mitigated by actually having a variable profit or a variable sales contingency. And don't address this risk by underestimating the sales price, just by you saying, well, I think it could go for this, but actually let's look at a lower figure. If everybody in your team does that, there's a whole process by which you've undervalued what you're going to sell something for. And as I say, the first purchaser is the purchaser who's going to benefit from that undervaluation. In terms of looking at the technical legal, we've already talked about mapping this risk, and we see this as a medium risk because you should be undertaking your due diligence with surveys and proper investigations. Yeah, the very good lists established by Vanessa and Anna in terms of all the different areas that you should engage with. And yes, I agree with you. We know a little about a lot of things, but not a lot about a specific thing. We are spinning our plates across lots of different disciplines in development, and it's keep your nerve and keep going and keep getting informed information from your consultants. You can get legal risks covered through indemnity insurance. So all the due diligence we see should be managed as a medium risk if you've got the appropriate advice. Your reputational risk, well, we see this as a medium high risk that needs to be managed. And this is about the sector of development where people like people dealing with organizations who do what they say they're going to do. It is a fairly conservative industry. There are long memories. It's people liking to do deals with the same people who do what they say they're going to do. So be clear on managing your reputation, because it's easily lost and very hard to regain. So credibility is important, especially for the next deal that you're pursuing. It needs to be managed. So think about the reputational risk. In terms of the regulator, we see this as critical, especially for the housing association sector. It could mean you're not being able to develop at all should supervision arise, access to grant restricted or denied. So your business plan could be on hold if you don't manage your relationship with the regulator. And it's essential to have a strong board who actually understand and have the appropriate skills to manage this relationship with the regulator. And here we are. Financially, we see this as critical, managing this risk. Your viability overall in your business plan could be threatened. So you may have business plan issues in terms of having a sustainable business. Your loan covenants might be breached. So it's critical that you actually have a good relationship with your finance team. We talked about the relationship with the asset team, but actually understanding as your projects become a program and that program is established inside the long-term business plan, it's building up that conversation with your finance team about the long-term business plan and sustainability and the loan covenants. It could place restrictions on your development capacity, whether the regulator steps in or whether your lenders step in because you've breached your covenants. And it's another reason to actually have a strong board with appropriate skills. And this is why you might see we've reflected this on a repeated basis to boards inside organizations, because it actually brings up to them, it's not just about development sites, it's about managing the risk as well and the reputation of the organization. So in terms of a summary, this is on a scale of actually seeing where these risks sit. I've moved cost from what was in low to medium, given the current circumstances. Probably people in conversation might say we're facing increasing risk on costs going forwards. We see the reputational technical in the medium area being managed through appropriate due diligence. And there's enough guidance from things like the audit checklist that you should be following, through internal controls in your development processes, whether you've built up a workflow to actually cover any items at key stages. So you can actually, and this is not a plug, but it is a plug, you could use SQL to actually set up workflows or checklists to say, have I done this due diligence at this key stage? We see sales as a high risk because you don't want to lose out on that surplus that you were hopefully generating. You don't want to transfer that to the first purchaser. And we see it as critical that your strong board keeps an eye on the financial and regulatory risks that are around as well, because that might stop you developing overall. That, in essence, is a very quick run through of how we look at risk and the different elements to it. Any questions?
Thank you very much, John. Is anyone from the panel or the audience like to ask John any direct questions about that presentation before we move on into Q&A?
I have one. I think cost, I think, is, probably going into the medium, but it's more supply as well, isn't it? I mean, I know cost is cost, but it's supply timings. I think that has an impact as well. And I think, again, it goes down to pre-planning and organisation of it, but getting hold of certain materials and bits and pieces has been a challenge, and it looks like it will be a challenge going forward as well. So
I wonder if that will actually encourage people to join various procurement clubs in terms of, you know, being together as a consortia, as it were, and gaining that preferred client status and the focus of the suppliers. I'm an advocate, having been in the sector, as Vanessa identified, of housing providers, housing associations working collectively together to achieve benefits, whether that's on joint venture schemes or actually on joint procurement, especially in these challenging areas of supplies. Yeah.
I'll just sort of jump back and talk about sales for a minute. I mean, sales is really a hot topic for all of us at the moment, as we're more and more doing, you know, a high level of shared ownership program, and some of us are dipping our toe into market sale as well. And I think the key point there is about, you know, having those mitigations in place. You know, if the market does fall away, what are you going to do about it? And I think the boards now are looking for that assurance from day one to say, okay, right, what's the plan B?
So what's the exit strategy, really?
Exactly, yeah.
Is it intermediate rents? Yeah. For how long? Yeah. Have we got links with any employers, key worker employers, etc., etc.? Or I know people that have gone down the educational and health route in terms of exit strategies on flats. But it's a case of how does that look in the long term on your business plan? Yeah, and have we got the skill set? Which is then a case of, if we haven't got the skill set, we buy it in or deal with an agent accordingly. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Andrew, I'll be completely honest. You know, where some organisations are dipping into market sale, we're not private house builders. We're not the Taylor Wimpey's. We're not the Carla Homes.
You're not,
you know,
exactly. So
it's a different customer.
If the point comes back down to your appraisal should be robust enough to have different options to do that and understand the impact of putting a risk element into your appraisals, and that's the point where it should be discussed. And putting in, like the private sector would do, a risk element in the appraisal and say, look, you know, that's what we expect out of it because of the risk that we're facing. And that, I suppose, that goes back to something else I was thinking about a bit earlier on. It's not your due diligence of a scheme is not just on the ground or whatever. It's what's coming up in the area. It's you know, you're all doing more properties and your developments. The private sector is delivering quite a lot as well, and it's a market appraisal, not just a financial appraisal. It's looking at when are these units going to hit the market and what is happening around that area. And I think too often that doesn't get, because we get excited, we enjoy doing it, we want to deliver stuff, and then it's a case of looking at that, stepping back a little bit and going, okay, well, our scheme is coming to the market on this date. What's happening around?
We also don't have the luxury of the private house builder on deciding on those timescales, because we've got those competing priorities of Homes England grant funding. I know not with open market sale, but with shared ownership. So if you were working in that sector, and I've never worked there, but obviously you're looking at when things are going to hand over, what's going on in the area, and you might hold back. You might hold back now because costs are too high. It's not worth it. But we don't have that luxury. And so it is about that robust market research from the outset. And also I think it's what Vanessa mentioned when it comes to bidding on Section 106s. You know, we have different teams doing different things, and it's what we talked about earlier is, you know, you buy the land and then we'll crack on with it and find all the issues. It's ensuring that those sales values are prudent but competitive, and we're finding that really difficult because it's such a competitive market. So, you know, the new business team want to max out the sales values. It comes over to the delivery and we're like, hang on a minute, where are we? So it's having that kind of broad view, isn't it? And as you say, that exit strategy.
And stepping away from it, not be too, it's not your baby. It's having an objective review on it. And I think us as land buyers, developers, whatever, we do get too close to it sometimes to actually, we're going to make it work. Whatever happens, we'll change this, we change that. It will work. Don't worry. We'll change something to make it work. You know, and sometimes that is not always good.
Okay, so I'm just going to take us to Nuala's question, and this is Nuala from East Riding. Coming from a local authority, which is now trying to double delivery each year over the next 5 years, we are at the start of that journey. There is a reluctance to do Section 106 and pressure to find sites to develop. There are limited lands in their ownership they have. At the moment, our biggest challenge is creating a robust developer agreement. So any advice or a good practice from the panel would be great.
I think with robust developer agreements, you will never get a consistent one that you can use with each house builder because they will all have their nuances. And we find it very difficult to get them to back down on clauses, especially when it comes to spec, defect periods. I don't know whether anyone holds retention on 106s. We're having a big debate about that at the moment. But I think if you can be a bit specific about the house builders that you're going to work with and work on that development agreement, you've got something going forward then. But I don't think you're going to get something consistent, and you're certainly not going to get something that 100% works for you.
On finding sites, I think it goes back to, you know, we said about walking around basics. You know, me and David Shelton, actually, who started SDS way back in the day, we did some work for a local authority some years back, admittedly, but it still rose truth, is that we go out of the car in that area and walked around the different areas, and we identified about 15 different sites that weren't known. So I think getting out of the car, and if you're struggling to actually find development or potential development sites, is a good place to start. And that's how a lot of private developers find a lot of their sites.
What about maps and OS? Isn't that quite a big thing at the moment, using that sort of technology?
Yep, yeah, that can help.
Yeah, we use Land Insights, I'm sure.
Yeah, Land Insight. Yeah, Land Insight, I know well. Yeah, yeah. There's a new one actually as competitors to them, which I sort of came up the other day actually.
We use Nimbus for ours.
Is it? Yeah, because Land Insight had the market a little bit, didn't they? But there was another one that popped up. I saw. I thought, oh, okay. But yeah, these things can aid and help. But actually having a good walk around is quite interesting sometimes.
Excellent. Okay, if there's any more questions from the audience, please do let us know. One other question from Nuala: what project management software does everyone use?
Oh, SQL. Oh, come on. Well, there's a thing called SQL. No, it's not. I've heard it's quite good. It does quite a lot of things for you.
Yeah, if you use it to its full potential.
You do. You will use it for your full potential, Hannah. When we finish our consultancy, I head up a consultancy team that helps our clients get the best out of our software. So there is a thing called SQL, which is a good project monitoring system that can help you monitor and keep you updated of your day-to-day activity across all your program.
One thing I would say on that is just, you know, there are limited products out there for this sector, and we are quite different to the house builder world, you know, so it's important having that system in place and having that in place from day one. Yeah,
and it's a journey. It's, you know, it's start from where you want to go and then build it from there. But as it should be very in line, in tune with your development strategy. So it's like having a development vision of how you want to use SQL, our project monitoring system. So do you want to track land? Do you want to look at that pre-planning process and all the activities now that one has to do on that process? So all your unconditional sites can go into it early doors. You can start getting that activity with your designers. The information trail that can start from that position in SQL, and then it matures and goes through a different status. And then you start doing your appraisals or your detailed viability assessments. So it's a journey that you can track and follow from wherever you want that to start to the end. But I'm a big advocate, and John is, and my team is helping clients track that early position, because I think it's really important. You know, there's so much involved in it, and some schemes might not go ahead. you know, and some land teams, you know, it happened, we did it a lot in my private days. We didn't build out every one we did, you know, we sold them off. And if you've got a land team, then I don't see why you can't do that and generate commercial things to offset your social activity, because you've got the team and you're getting more experienced of doing that, and you know the area, the locality you're working in. So find sites and sell them to other people.
Brilliant. I'm taking my SDS hat off for a second. While obviously, yes, we've all discussed SQL and it feeds into Proval. There's all that great stuff, which is why a lot of people use it. But I think project management wise, repeating, I guess, what Vanessa said, you have things like coins, I think, and there are some local authorities, quite large ones that I know that really did want SQL. They're forced down a Microsoft Dynamics route. Which I've had nothing but complaints about from them after that, because, you know, when you're building something from scratch specifically for an organization, you end up taking on development cost risks. You know, you get project managers meant to talk to each other, someone's sick for a while, someone doesn't do this, and then later 6 months, you know, 6 months has gone by and you have a huge bill and nothing delivered. So there is certainly a lot of different project management softwares out there. Not necessarily anything is pre-configured apart from us and obviously our competitors and 3Panel. John?
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
I think being a new person in a development team, you get fixated about your own individual project, and it's seeing the bigger picture where individual projects come together as a program. That's a realization that you need to manage not just your individual project, but you need to manage a program. And then you realize that your program actually feeds into your 30-year business plan for your organization. If you're a local authority, it's your HRA 30-year business plan. If you're a housing association, it's your rolling 30-year business plan. And certainly I, as a young project manager, didn't have that wider vision. But your little individual project can be the one that tips the balance on your business plan. So it is important to have that wider vision of a program and the overall business plan of your organization, because you might be the camel that breaks the business plan back with your individual project. And it's having that wider vision as a starting position as a project manager. And also, I think what Vanessa and Anna have talked about, which is engagement with your colleagues, that you're not just working in silos, but you're actually working for the business collectively. And having a program management tool is key for everybody, because it even leads into things like property handover details from your individual projects, if you've got a decent program management system. So yeah, I'll echo the fact that, yeah, we can get fixated on individual projects, but actually try and keep your eyes on the bigger picture, because that's what you're trying to sustain overall.
Excellent. Okay, well, it is now 11 o'clock, time to end the webinar. I would like to really just thank you so much to our panelists, to everyone here today. Oh, sorry, Andrew, before I...
Well, I'll just say one thing. I obviously, you know, do the thanks and everything else like that. But we're going to be in a live event. Wow, the NHF Finance Conference is coming up. I know some development teams do go. I think Tourist, and I think your team generally does go. So Vanessa, it'd be nice to see you there. We'll have a stand. We'll be there. It'd be nice to meet people and have a chat and see how their development plans are going forward. So come and see us. I think the date is what, 16th of March, is it? Something like that? 16th, 17th?
NHF, it probably should be in my calendar.
Yeah, it's definitely mine. But so I believe it's that week. It's the Wednesday, Thursdays. Yeah, 16th, 17th on the top of my head. NHF conference. So come and we've got a stand there.
Right. And on the 17th, it's also St. Patrick's Day. So there's a nice little overlap there.
Oh, well, that's the Guinness will be flowing. That's really important. Thank you, guys.
Once again, Vanessa Dockrell, Anna James, John Stevens, neither of them have been paid to do today. They're all doing it just because they want to get out there and share best practice. So we're very grateful for them. Thank you very, very much. And we hope to see you at the NHF in March.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
Chris. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.